Okay, so welcome back to Learn English with B, and obviously I'm B. And today we are going to be discussing the other skills that we need to learn for writing comparative graph. And it is comparing and contrasting phrases or words. Okay, there are some words that we can use to show the comparison and the contrast. And what are they? So let's check it out one by one, shall we? Okay, so on the first list and on the first and second list, I have while and whereas. The meaning is sementara itu or sedangkan. Okay, and I'm going to give you example. So check it out. Okay, so the data that I took was from the data, the advantages and disadvantages of living in Bowen Island. And then here, you can have a look there that the number of tourists who dislike the living cost in Bowen Island is 50%. And then the number of people who does not enjoy the living cost is 25%. Okay, those are simple sentences. So I can combine those two sentences using while or whereas. And here we go. From the survey, it is apparent that half of the respondents dislike the living cost in Bowen Island, while / whereas a quarter of which do not enjoy the entertainment. Okay, so we can combine the previously two sentences into one, and it can make our sentence more complex. Okay. That's the first version, and then the second version, this is quite similar actually, but then here we go. From the survey, it is obvious. Previously I used it is apparent, but then now I use it is obvious. It is obvious that half of respondents claim that they dislike the living cost, while / whereas a quarter of which do not enjoy the entertainment. Okay, so those are the examples of sentences using while or whereas. So we can combine two sentences into one using while or whereas. And the meaning is sementara itu or sedangkan. Okay, now moving on to the next comparing and contrasting phrases or words, we have as opposed to or compared to. Dibandingkan dengan, or we can say berbeda dengan, it can be like that. Okay. And the same, I'm going to present examples based on the data I took from a pie chart or pie charts, which show about the advantages and disadvantages of Bowen Island. And here we go. Okay, so as you can see on the pie chart, the first pie chart, 20% of visitors state that entertainment is one of the drawbacks in Bowen Island. 15% of which think that the weather is one of the disadvantageous aspects. Okay, so from these two sentences we can combine into one, and here is the new version. Entertainment is one of the drawbacks in Bowen Island, in which a quarter of visitors claim so, compared to the weather, which is suggested by only 15%. Okay, as you might have seen my other video about the variation of describing percentages, 20% can be written as a quarter of blah blah blah. Okay, that's the first version I use compared to, and then if you want to say as opposed to, we also can make it by writing entertainment is one of the drawbacks in Bowen Island, in which a quarter of visitors claim so, as opposed to the weather, which only accounts for 15%. Okay, so those are the example of sentences using the phrases of comparing and contrasting, as opposed to and compared to. Now moving on to the next one, we have discrepancy or disparity. Berbeda, perbedaan, okay? Discrepancy and disparity, perbedaan, okay? And again, I'm going to show you the example. Here we go. Okay, let's discuss the discrepancy. Okay, as you can see on the data, food quality accounts for 10%, cost living accounts for 50%. So, here is the formulation of the sentence using discrepancy. As the least proportion of downside, the number of people who thinks that the food quality is not good has the huge discrepancy with the living cost, contributing at 1/10. I say huge discrepancy, it means perbedaan yang besar, right? Because why it has the huge discrepancy? Because as you can see, the proportion of people who thinks that the food quality is not good is about the 40 something, 50%, half of the respondents, and then only 10%. Okay, right, so that's the example for discrepancy, perbedaan. Huge discrepancy, it means perbedaan yang besar. Next one, we have disparity. Okay, here I will show you the different example. Okay, now it's about the advantages. As you can see on the data, people contributes as the highest advantages at 42%. The salary accounts for 35%. Okay, those are two simple sentences. And then good accommodation has 11% proportion. Culture is claimed as one of the advantages by 12% of visitors. Okay, now I'd like to formulate a sentence based on the data that you can see on the presentation. And there you go. There is a considerable disparity between the people and the scenery, since most visitors, 42%, state that the native people are the major advantages, whereas scenery is the second most advantageous factor of the island with 35%. Okay, here you can have a look that I use considerable disparity. Considerable, it means tidak terlalu banyak, sedikit. Okay, considerable disparity, it means perbedaan yang tidak terlalu banyak. Okay, because as you can see, the people accounts for 42%, and then the salary accounts for 35%. So it's not huge disparity, but only considerable disparity. Okay, and then here I also combine with the first comparing and contrasting word, which is whereas. Okay, right. Okay, so for the next list, there is unlike. Tidak seperti. This is the antonym of like. Unlike plus noun. That's the grammatical concept of unlike. Okay, so I'm going to give example for unlike. Still, the data is from the advantages and disadvantages of Bowen Island. So here we go. Okay, so it's still about the advantages. As you can see that the good accommodation has 11% proportion. Culture is claimed as one of the advantages by 12% of visitors. So I can write, unlike the people and the landscape, culture and accommodation are listed on the two last place, with culture having higher proportion than accommodation at 12% and 11% respectively. Okay, so that's the use of unlike, because people and scenery are the big group, and then whereas accommodation and culture are on the low group. So we can say unlike. We can also use whereas, it depends. The more we know, the more variation we have, so just be creative, okay? Be as creative as possible. Okay, so the next one, I have two interesting phrases. Those are poles apart and polar opposite. Basically, those two phrases have similar meanings. Berbeda, polar opposite. It means ya berbeda, satu di sisi sini, satu di sisi sini. That's polar opposite or poles apart. Poles apart it means berbeda, cukup banyak. Poles apart. Okay. And here is the example. Check this out. Okay. So, as you can see, according to the result of survey, the proportion of people claiming the people and the culture are two of advantages is poles apart, with the people being the highest and culture being the second least advantage, contributing at 42% and 12%. Okay. By the way, I have the other example, the use of polar opposite. Actually, the concept is similar the concept is similar to the previous one. According to the result of survey, the proportion of people claiming the people and the culture are two of advantages is polar opposite, with the people being the highest and culture being the second least advantage, contributing at 42% and 12%. Okay, that's the example, or those are the example of the use of polar opposite and poles apart. Okay, so when the differences are big, or when the difference is big or huge, so we can say polar opposite or poles apart. Right. And then now, there are still two more words to show similarities. So when we compare, sometimes we show the similarities. We try to showcase the similarities. And what are they? The first is the use of likewise. And the second is the use of similarly. Or we can also use similar to. Okay? So, by using the same example from the advantages and disadvantages of living in Bowen Island, here are the example. Okay. Similar to the culture, accommodation is the least advantageous thing in the island, claimed only by just over one-tenth of the people. Okay. Or I can use similarly, accommodation is the least advantageous thing in the island, claimed only by just over one-tenth of the people. Well, okay, the example similar to the culture will make sense if we pay attention to the previous sentence. Okay, and here culture and accommodation have similar proportion, so I can say similar to the culture. I treat them having the similar proportion, so we can write similar to the culture. Or besides writing similar to the culture, we can write likewise, comma, accommodation is the least advantageous thing. So it means I treat accommodation and culture the same because they are in low group. Okay, they have low proportion. Okay, so that's all for the discussion of phrases or words that we can use to describe the comparison and contrast. Okay, hopefully it gives you new insight about how to write comparative graph. Remember, learn it, practice it, and repeat, and never stop learning. Okay, that's all for now. Thank you very much. I'm Bei. Have a wonderful time and see ya.